All right, looking at our drawing here, we have a front profile view and then we have our side view. So the handle consists of two parts. There's one piece here and then there's a second piece here. And then we're going to drill and set some brass rivets to hold those two pieces together wherever you decide to put those rivets. And then this blade is going to fit inside of the groove. So as you can see that we're going to have to notch both of these out and fit that piece in, and that also is going to accept a couple of rivets. The three pieces that we need to make is one, we need to make the blade, and then we need to make two pieces of the handle. So this one piece of the blade, we have to have a piece of steel that is 5 inches long, 7/8 of an inch or 0.875 inches wide. The stock that we have is actually 1 inch, so we're going to cut a 5 by 1 by 1/8 of an inch thick steel, which is some material I just so happen to have right here. So this is some cold rolled 1020 steel that is 1 inch thick. It's about 20 feet long right now. We're going to cut it down to length, and it is 1/8 of an inch thick. So we'll cut that down. That'll be the next step. The other material that we have is 1/4 inch. So each one of these handles here is going to be 1/4 of an inch thick. And so what we'll need to do is we'll need to cut it down and square it off to 2 7/8 inch long. All right, so let's start with cutting our blade, or a 1/4 inch or 1/8 inch piece. So we need to cut it to 5 inches. So this is a combination square. When I loosen off this thumb screw, then I can adjust the length, and then I just tighten up the thumb screw and it's going to lock this blade in position. So I'm going to measure this or set it to 5 inches. Okay, so if you can see there, it's set exactly on 5 inches. And then I'm going to come to my workpiece here, and I'm going to set it and hold it on the end. And then I'm going to scribe a line with my scriber. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to mark it. Okay, and then I'm going to double check the length. And then I'm going to come in with my square like this, holding it exactly square, and then I'm going to scribe it, and I'm going to scribe it just a little bit long because I don't want to be short on this measurement. I can file it down where I've scribed it right here. It's not showing up in the light here, but you can see where I marked it right here. And then I went a little bit long just to give myself a little bit of room when I cut. So I'm going to cut that now with a hacksaw to length. All right, so now I've got my the piece I'm working on in the vise here. And when I put it in the vise, it's just a very gentle, I'm not cranking on the vise at all because I don't want to dent the material and ruin the material in the vise. I placed my cut line nice and close into the jaws of the vise so that when I go to cut this, it's not going to make a horrible vibrating sound. I have a regular 18 tooth per inch general purpose blade here, and I'm going to start by trying to notch this. Okay, so now I'm going to cut through this stock as close to that line as I can manage. The closer and the more time and care that I take with the hacksaw right now, the less filing and squaring off that I'm going to have to do later. So it's really worth my time to take that extra minute or two to go slowly and watch that line. Now, if I see that I'm getting too far away from the line, I can actually bring the cut in closer. And if I'm getting too far away, I can pull it away from that line. So let's see how this goes. I'm sighting over the top of the saw. So I'm not like looking at it like this. I'm actually sighting over the top. That way I can see exactly where my blade is in relationship to my scribed line. And yeah, there we go. Okay, so now if I can get this to focus, you can see how close I got to my line and how close I was able to maintain my line there. You can just barely see it. It's a straight cut. It's a square cut. And so I'm very happy with that. So I'm gonna need to lay this out with some layout die now that I've got it roughly cut out, and then I'm gonna square these two ends, and that's gonna be the blade of my machinist square. All right, the next step that I have to do is to cut the two pieces for the handle. So each one of those was 2 7/8. So I'm gonna lay it out off the end here. I'm gonna set my combination square to, this is 2 7/8 right there. So I'm actually just gonna give myself a little bit of tolerance there to make a mistake. So I'm just gonna add a slight amount, and then I'm gonna file it down to size after I've cut it. So same procedure. I'm coming in and I'm gonna mark it to length. So when I scribe this line, I'm actually kind of on an angle because I wanna make sure that that point gets right down in the corner. If I come like this, it's gonna be off the edge of the square. I wanna mark it in, and then I'm gonna come in with my square and make sure that I've got a nice square line, and scribe it. Okay, now what I need to do is cut this piece, and then I'll do that again to cut a second piece, and this is going to be the handle of my square. So it's actually going to be about this large. So this is the first piece of the handle that's going to go in the square. Okay, so the same procedure. You can see my line. I've got it in nice tight to the vise, and then I'm going to cut from the top side. It's really important that not only am I watching the front edge, but I'm making sure that I'm not going to cut on an angle in, so that when I cut on the back side, I'm actually cutting it too short. So I want to make sure that I'm cutting square, and I also want to make sure that I'm cutting on the far side or the left side of the line that I've scribed. All right, so we're all done there. I'm quite happy with the result. I have a nice square edge, so you can see where the line was, oh no, sorry. I'm looking at it through the camera here. So you can see where the line was scribed there, and I'm quite close to it. I've done a good job of keeping it square in both directions. You're always gonna have this little bit at the end that just kind of breaks off, that's fine. And then, so I'm gonna have to cut another one of these. I won't film that. And then we're gonna go about making all of our pieces to length, squaring off the edges, and then we'll get into creating the notches. Okay, so we've cut our 3 pieces. So these are the parts of the square. This is essentially what we're making. So this, on a factory one, is really just all one piece. What we're gonna do is fit this to look something like this. To begin, what we really need to do is I need to take these 3 pieces, and we have to square up the edges and start to turn them into something. So this one is 5 inches long, so we need to make this one 5 inches long. So we'll start on the blade first, and then we'll focus on the 2 handles. So the first thing that I'm going to do is take the layout die. So this is just steel layout die. I like the one with the brush because it's a little bit more controlled. The spray, is bigger for bigger pieces, but when we're just doing this little one, I like to put this on. Now, you don't need to put a ton of this on. It's actually more accurate, or I find it more accurate when you lay it on quite thin. So if you see this happening where it's not really sticking to the surface, it usually means that it's covered in oil or it hasn't been cleaned properly. So that's my fault. So I'll flip that over, clean that off so that that's gone. And I'll work on this side here, and hopefully it'll go on smoother, and it does. So I don't want to go, the thicker I put this on, the longer it's going to take it to dry. So that's a pretty heavy coat, so I'll give that a couple of minutes. So now that the layout dye is all nice and dried, we have to make this into right now it's about a 5 1/8 by 1 inch. So we have to turn this into 5 inch by 7/8. So we have to take an 1/8 inch off of this part, and we have to square these ends. So to do that, the first step is we're going to actually scribe a line, and we're just going to square up one edge to one of these bottom edges as a reference. So to square up the edge, what I'm going to do is take my square and I'm going to lay it on one of these work pieces. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm actually going to mark this out, not too deep, but I'm going to mark a little very slight V-notch. That's just indicating that this is going to be the edge that I'm going to keep, and this top part is going to be the edge that I'm going to remove. So for me, that's just a nice little reference, and I just lightly knocked that in with a scribe. I'm using this knife as a scribe because I don't have any scribers right now because there's class in session. But what I'm going to do to start this off is I have given this, I've made this, as you can see, just slightly over 5 inches. So I have to file that much off no matter what I do. So I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna lay out my square, and with my scriber, so you would do this with a scriber, I'm just doing it with a Olfa knife here. And what you're gonna do is lay out and scribe a line here. So that line is square or perpendicular to this edge that I decided that I'm going to keep. Okay, so now what I have to do is I have to file and I have to square exactly to that line. So I'll show you how to do that now. So because this is going to be a precision measuring tool that we're going to have for a long time, the first thing I want to do is I want to get my soft jaws. I just have a couple pieces of copper here, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to clamp this workpiece in my vise, barely poking up above the top of the vise. If I hold this up really high above the vise, what will happen is it'll vibrate and really make a obnoxious sound that you get a whole group of people doing that. It's going to be quite a lot. So I'm going to go something like that. So I've got it down quite close to the vise, and I'm not clamping on it super tight. And then I'm going to grab my flat bastard file and I'm going to cross file this. But I'm not cross filing it flat. I'm cross filing it with a slight angle upwards. And what will happen if I start filing, two things will happen. One, material will start to be removed. The second is that the end is going to have a slight bevel to it, and it's not going to be quite square. So I want to bring the camera down nice and close and zoomed in here so you can see exactly what's going on. So you can see that I'm coming down to that line that I've scribed in here with a slight angle. And I'm watching, I don't want to go below the line that I've scribed. I'm okay if I'm high on the backside. I'll show you how to deal with that, but I don't want to I want to make sure that I don't go below that line. I'm going to be very careful as I'm coming to file this. Okay, so you can see I still have some more material. Now I'll put the camera off to the side so you can see the slight angle that I'm going to be putting on when I'm filing this and doing this technique. So if this is flat, I'm just ever so slightly elevated, and I'm being very careful right now. I'm not coming in there and trying to take off a lot of material fast. The most important thing for me right now is accuracy and making sure that I don't go too far. So I take a few strokes of the file and then I take a look and I keep going, and I'm conscious, ever so conscious, not to dive the end of the file down. I gotta make sure that I've always got the file tip pointed up. Also, when I'm at the edges, I'm making sure that I'm not rolling the file over the edges. I want to make sure that this is perfectly square. So as you can see here, I'm getting very close to that line, and I'm angled on an angle up so that I can't go into it. So I'm gonna go right, keep going right down to that. A little more on this side. So I want to show you how close I'm getting to that line. So I'm just about there, and as you can see, there's a little bit of a bevel on it, which is fine. I'm going to clean that up after. Right now, all I'm doing is bringing this in for a dimension. So a touch more to go. It's also important when you're clamping this in that you're clamping it in perfectly vertical. Don't want to fight yourself for no reason. Okay, I think we're there. I'll bring it out to show the camera and just to hold it up to the light just to see exactly how accurate I was able to get there. So I'm exactly on the scribed line that I scribed, and I have a nice bevel. That bevel is arbitrary. It's just to make sure that I'm not diving. No, I'm not diving that back edge. Okay, so I'm exactly on that line. Now I'm going to finish this and square the edge up. Okay, so that was my bastard file. Now I'm going to grab my single cut file and I'm going to draw file this. So when I go to start draw filing, what you're going to see is on this back edge, I'm going to sort of create a facet. Now, because I know this front edge is there, if I start draw filing, okay, so if I start draw filing like this, I'm going to start to see a little facet develop. Now I'm going to make sure that I hold my file perfectly level here, so I'm not going to hit this front edge. I don't want to go lower than I've already gone on the front. And I'm just going to come back and forth with the draw filing until it's completely comes across the whole surface. So I want to show what that facet looks like at the very beginning. Okay, so there you go. You can see that this started to kind of flatten out on the back. Now I'm going to draw file it, and that facet's going to come across the whole surface. So I'll draw file it till it's about halfway, and then I'll show you again. And again, the main thing here is just holding the file flat. The first process with the cross filing was to make sure I at least was on a bevel and wasn't going to dive the back edge. Now I'm filing it like this to make sure that everything is perfectly square. Okay, so now you can see that that facet is halfway across. So I started off with that little bit. I know that the front edge is there. This facet is higher than this front edge, so I'm just going to continue to draw file until that facet moves all the way across, and then I know that I have a perfectly square and to the line exactly where I want it to go. So when I'm draw filing this, it's really important to not go too hard with the draw filing and round these corners. I want to keep these two edges on each side of each end of this as square and straight as I possibly can. If I start pushing or I dive the file over the end, it's going to give me a unsquare corner or a rounded corner, and I don't want that. So I'm not going past the halfway point where the file wants to flip over. I'm just keeping that backwards pressure on the, going 2/3. And I'm just pushing very gently, and I'm paying attention to what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm getting down to the end, and you can see that the facet has come pretty much all the way across here. So it's nice and sharp, and you can just see that there's still a little bit of a bevel at the front that I'm trying to take off. You'll also notice that in the center, it's a lot easier to take the material out of, sorry, one second. It's a lot easier to take the material out of the center part of this than it is the ends, just because the file's going back and forth so many more times over the center. So be sure to make at the end here that you're taking all the material down completely flat. So you want to go all the way down on this end equal and here as you have in the middle. All right, so there's one little area there that I've actually hit the line. You can see it right there. You see where you can't see the bevel anymore. You can see there's kind of this edge, this rounded edge, and then there's one spot there that I've hit where I've actually hit the line. So I want to be away from that now, and now I just want to focus on the two ends. So right now all I'm looking for is I'm using the light
and I'm looking for that beveled edge at the front until it just disappears. So it's gone for most of this, and I'm just filing those edges. Okay, so I'm there. So let's take a look here. You can see I filed it down with my bevel technique, right down to the line, and then I've squared it up by draw filing it. And I have a nice, clean, smooth finish on the metal. There's no scratches. And if I put the square on that, we'll see that it is nice and square. So that's one end. So now what I've done is I squared up one end. Now what I need to do is I need to accurately measure out 5 inches, and then I need to scribe the other side here over on this side. And then I need to repeat the process on the other side. Then we'll come in and we'll take out this 1/8 of an inch along the length with the same technique. So we need to do it 3 times. So to mark this out, I'm going to come back to my square, and I've got it on 5 inches right to the dot. A perfect 5 inches, and I'm going to lock this blade in place. As you can see, I'm right on the line. And then I'm going to come in here, and this is the edge that I just squared. I'm going to put that against the handle of my square, and I am going to just mark and scribe a line there. Okay, so now you can see there's a line, there's a little light scribe line. Now I'm going to take my square and I'm going to lay it out, and I'm going to line it up exactly to that mark that I just made. And then I'm going to come in with my scriber / knife. Okay, and as you can see, I've got another squared off line here. So now I'm going to proceed to do the same procedure and square this up, and then I should be left with a perfectly square 5-inch long piece of cold rolled steel. Okay, so we're all set now. We have a perfectly square 5-inch long piece of 1/8 by 1 inch cold rolled steel. So next step is to come in and scribe a line that is 1/8 of an inch. To do that, we need to go to the surface plate. Okay, so we're going to lay out the edge here. So if you remember, I have this marked so that this is the bottom is the edge that I'm going to keep. And so I'm going to mark this at 7/8 according to our drawing. So what I'll do is I'm going to put this on the piece, and make sure that you've got any burrs or any kind of piece that's stuck there. And I'm going to take this surface gauge here, and I'm going to set it to 7/8. So on my set square here, I'm going to kind of roughly lay that out. This is one way that I can do this. So I'm going to set it to 7/8 here. So I'm actually going to take the point and set it in the groove, and then tighten that up. And then I'm going to come over to my workpiece, and I'm just going to scribe it. Just like that. Okay. So as you can see now, I've got a nice, clean, crisp edge. Okay, so now we got this done. We're gonna come in with the grinder and we're gonna grind that down. I'm gonna try and do it as carefully as possible. I gotta watch the line as I go. So you can see I'm getting down to the line there. I don't want to go too far. I'm just making sure that I get as close, and then I'm going to finish it with the file. So the big risk is that on the end, you can dive the edge on the ends a little bit. So be careful not to do that, and just keep grinding away until you get there. So I did the same thing that we did with the file. If you look at it, I've actually got a little bit of a bevel there. So make sure that when you're doing it, I only have the line on the front side here. Okay, so that's where the line is, and then I got that bevel towards the back, and then I'm gonna go and file that out and finish it with the file. So there's a little bit of a burr that melted over on the side here. So I'm just gonna knock that off so that when I'm filing, I can see what's happening. Could also use probably a deburring tool. All right, so I'm pretty much there. I can probably draw file a little bit more out of this, but I'm just gonna kind of leave it where it is for now so that I can do some fine adjustments after I've got it fitted. So on my vernier here, it's supposed to be 0.875 and I've got 0.890, so I'm 15 thou over there, 15 thou, 10 thou in the middle, and then 5 thou towards this end. So it kind of tapers and becomes larger down this end, smaller on this end. So I can put a little bit more effort into that, but I'm just gonna kind of leave it like that for this demonstration. And so we got 5 inches by 1/8 of an inch by 7/8 of an inch. And now I'll work on the handle. All right, so that's the blade part is all done for now. So the next piece to put our attention to is the handle. So there's going to be the 2 halves of the handle. These are going to fit together, and we're going to have to notch each one of them 1/16 of an inch to fit the blade in the middle. So we don't need to cut these. We have them cut to length, but all we really need to do to begin this part of the process is to square up both ends. So same procedure. Scribe a line as close as I can, file a bevel, draw file it flat. I'm going to do that for both of them, and then we're going to notch out the inside edge here. I'm going to lay it out and put my square mark across it with my square, like so. So I want to be as close as I can, make sure that I'm not going to have any low material. And in these combination squares, there's a scribe inside of it. So I'll look for the lowest spot, hold it in place, and then I'm going to come in and scribe my line and put that back so I have it for later. And so there you have it. That's our line we're going to go to.